We hear a lot about the pro-life struggle to defend the unborn here in the United States, but our Canadian brothers and sisters are waging a similar fight as well. Tonight on EWTN Live, we'll find out what the Canadians are up against in their work to protect life and save the life of Canadians. So please stay with us, eh? Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome to us. Not welcome back. Welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And tonight we have gone not too far from the United States, but certainly outside our country. Our guest is a Catholic Archbishop of strong convictions, and he's not afraid to tell the truth to the culture of death that is trying to take over his country, which is one of the few in the world with no legal restrictions on abortion. Hopefully, this will soon change with the help of our guest and many others. So please welcome the Archbishop of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, His Grace the Most Reverend Terrence Prendergast. Welcome, Your Grace. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's good to have you, and a lot of folks don't realize, but we are also Jesuit brothers.
Indeed.
That you entered the society in what year?
61.
61, and I was just about 8 years later, and 68 or 7 years later. And you've been the Archbishop of Ottawa for how long?
Just about finishing 7 years. In the next month, I'll be 7 years.
Okay. But before that, you were also in Halifax.
I was there for 9 years, and before that, I was in Toronto for 3.5 years.
As a bishop?
As bishop, auxiliary bishop.
Auxiliary bishop there.
So I'm celebrating my 19th anniversary on Friday.
Yeah. Well.
It's gone fast.
Yeah. Well, you know, I have a theory that the older we get, the smaller a percentage of our life each year is. So it seems to go by more quickly with time. Now, one of the things that, because again, maybe not everybody in the audience realizes, but Ottawa is the capital of Canada, the whole of the country. And as Archbishop there, you get a chance to be involved in the pro-life march. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the way abortion got started in Canada and then where people are today and their stance against it.
Well, the start of the permission for abortion was in 1969, May the 14th, 1969, a Thursday. That's really why we have the second Thursday of every month of May as the date. So this year it's the May the 8th. And on that day, the government proposed what they call an omnibus bill. It covered a lot of different things. It eliminated restrictions on homosexual behavior. It allowed abortion in any hospital in Canada as long as it was approved by 3 doctors, a committee of 3 doctors for health reasons. But the definition was so broad that basically anyone could have an abortion when they wanted to. There were some restrictions, but not very many. And then a famous Dr. Morgenthaler set up an abortion clinic to allow unrestricted abortions anytime for any reason.
Was that also legal within that legislation?
It was not.
Yeah.
You still had to have 3 doctors, and he was only 1 doctor, and so on. But what he, in effect, managed to do is to persuade people that women should have an abortion when they wanted one. It was part of the feminist movement and the empowering of people. And every time the government took him to court for illegally performing abortions, an audience, a jury, would not convict him. And so the government kept appealing, but it didn't get anywhere. So they appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it's up to Parliament to establish limits if they wish, because that's really what the pro-life people were arguing, is that we really should have at least some limits. Now, others didn't want any limits at all. They wanted simply no abortions. And so there was a division among the pro-life cause. It's still a bit of a tension these days. Some feeling that any law that would restrict abortions would be an improvement, and others saying no, unless we eliminate abortions entirely, that's not where we want to go. So
it's a tension that some people hear too.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Supreme Court decided that the government could propose legislation that would limit abortion, but the Parliament refused to do it. They just felt that the movement in society, the pressures they were feeling from their constituents and from a very active pro-abortion lobby, wouldn't allow them to commit to proposing a law. Therefore, we have no law. Mm-hmm. So in effect, we have abortion without restrictions, anytime, for any reason, anywhere.
And, you know, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw the news just that was just a few days after Easter, that Zenit news agency had reported that the European Center for Law and Justice made an appeal to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights and the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture to investigate cases that describe the torture regarding children born alive after late-term abortions. And that the methods of late abortion, especially in Canada and the United Kingdom, such as the way where they put scissors into the skull, extract the brain, and then finish pulling the child out. And that between the years 2000 and 2011, Canada reported 622 babies were born alive after an abortion and were left to die without any medical intervention. You know, and we certainly have this going on here. I know Illinois took up a law, and when then State Senator Barack Obama was in the Illinois Senate, he would not vote for it or against it. One of the most cowardly things, that a baby who survives an abortion
should not be treated.
Should not, you know, he wouldn't say should be or shouldn't be. He was just a plain coward, not to take a stance one way or the other. And I think it's cowardice to let, to do the abortion, but a survivor.
Not to come to the aid of a child in need.
Yeah, because what had happened is two nurses, or a couple nurses, had suffocated the babies in plastic bags filled with formaldehyde. You know, and he wouldn't vote on that, just said present. Coward. But y'all have this, a similar problem.
We do.
And 622, that's a lot.
And many of the children who are late-term abortions were sent to doctors in the United States because we don't have enough specialization in this.
I see.
So, which is sad commentary on both of our countries.
Yes,
but, you know, we have publicly funded medical treatment so that any hospital, if a woman goes to a hospital in Canada, she can have a surgical abortion. And because of these complications, they would often send them to clinics elsewhere.
So this...
The battle is on both sides of the border.
Oh, absolutely.
And around the world.
Yeah, it is. It is. China being the worst, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I don't know, now the United States, for instance, that's another thing that our president has done, is link foreign aid to family planning and family health and all that, which means that we want you to do abortions for our money and contracept your babies. So get rid of your babies and we'll give you money.
Well,
do they do that in Canada?
At least the federal government has made some restrictions on aid that's going to other countries. And as a matter of fact, our Prime Minister developed a program called Maternal Health. So basically helping women in the developing world to have children, even if there are complications, and to come to their aid, but not to allow abortions to be part of the plan. So at least that's a positive improvement, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. Now, in terms of how Canadians are responding, because it's not only Catholics, it's Canadians of many faiths, you know, who respond, and some with no faith, but just dealing with their own inner humanity. Yeah. How are they responding?
Well, it depends how the question is phrased, but almost all Canadians, a majority of Canadians would want some restrictions on abortion. So that's a positive sign, that they realize that, that this is a horrible thing, and they would like to help in some way. Most are not in favor of unlimited restrictions on abortion. They feel that there are some hardship cases, rape, incest, and so on, where they would allow that. But the majority of people would want some restrictions on abortion. That's time and again comes up, but it does not translate very effectively into public policy. I think basically politicians are frightened by the media, who would go aboard them if they took stances. And usually if the parliamentarian would propose a private member's bill to define the unborn child as a human person, that's always defeated in the House of Commons. People don't want to go there. They feel it would put restrictions on abortion, and they don't want that. There's just it's kind of like a third rail. No one wants to touch it. Yeah. So this is why I think the testimony for life by the March for Life, it's held in Ottawa around the date 1969, so it'll be 45 years this year, but also in other capitals across the country, because it's a wide country and not everyone can come to Ottawa. So there are marches and manifestations in provincial capitals such as Victoria and Vancouver Island and Edmonton and across the country, basically. Some will choose another date, not that particular one, but something that's more suitable to their culture or their needs. Okay. But there's been a grassroots movement for this. We also have had a number of experiences of 40 Days for Life, where people would protest outside the abortion clinics and ask that girls, women going into the clinics would rethink the choice of having an abortion and risk keeping the child and being supported by the community.
Now, a couple questions. When people are outside an abortion clinic, what are the limits of their speech? You know, what kind of limits do they have on where they can stand or speak and so on? We have a lot of limits here.
There are some restrictions in the sense that some cities and provinces would have set up bubble zones, they call it, where people are not allowed to approach persons, or they're not allowed to have placards or do some type of demonstration. They have had people arrested who have come too close to people by the door of the abortion clinic, for example. But in Ottawa, the majority of people who, for 40 Days for Life or during Life Chain or even during the March for Life, will stand in front of the abortion clinic. We'll do it on the other side of the road and pray there and witness that way, and people know what's going on. There's a challenge there to find out what's the most effective way of communicating and helping women, and sometimes with their accompanying fiance or friend who would go with them, male friends, to persuade them that abortion is not a good idea and talk about the life issues. We've had a number of women who've been regularly arrested and imprisoned for violating the norms and the laws, and some consider these women really heroic for what they've done. They really are suffering the consequences of a culture of death.
Now, the other question I also had was, given the strong pro-abortion stance of your Canadian press, what do they say about the pro-life and anti-abortion protesters, about the March for Life? What has been their coverage of the March for Life over the past years?
Much of it has been ignoring it. Sometimes you'll hear, for example, on the radio station in the morning of the march, encourage you to stay away from the streets around Parliament Hill because there's a demonstration there today. We won't say what it's about. A number of the media were so criticized by people who attended the march. They wrote into the newspaper saying, "You didn't cover this. This is a newsworthy event. There's 20,000 people on the Hill marching, you should give it coverage. They'll have 150 people protesting something and it'll be on the front page, but 20,000 people is not news. And I would say in recent years, the media has responded to that by actually giving some coverage, but not very much, and sometimes not very sympathetically.
Yeah, that's...
Often you'll have, for example, 150 people protesting against the 20,000 people who are marching, or 22,000 people who are marching, and they'll depict them as almost equal partners in a dialogue, you know? A picture of the counter-demonstrators and the people who are marching for life.
Do you have very many counter-demonstrators, pro-abortion demonstrators standing up against the March for Life? There is a regular group of, say, 100 and 150, maybe a little bit more, with chants and so on, but they pick a particular place along the route, because the route is normally the same one every year. And there is a monument to human rights along Elgin Street, and they'll often stand there and protest against the people, often mocking the Catholic faith by talking about the rosaries and the ovaries, a kind of play on words, but the chants will be there. Some of our people, some of our young people will sometimes get back at them or speak to them or even kind of try to shout them, but most of our people have been pretty good about simply walking peacefully, praying and witnessing and not getting involved with it. And that I think is a credit to their maturity. Many of the high school students will come from across Ontario for this. It's very interesting that the young people are there in great numbers. That's the case here too. Yes, yeah. No, and that does not get reported. It shows that the culture of life is taking root among young people. One of the points I've heard made is that a number of the young people feel like survivors, that they've lost siblings, cousins, potential friends, certainly, to abortion, and that it's not very theoretical, it's a felt sense of being survivors, that we are alive, but we want the other kids to be alive too. Yeah. I haven't heard that, but it's an interesting concept. It's certainly very much a part of life in our culture today. Yeah, yeah, and it's certainly, I remember in this country, when abortion was legalized in 1973, just about 4 years after y'all, that the biggest supporters for abortion were males between 15 and 35. But that has radically changed, with all those born afterwards. I would say that one of the things I've appreciated since I've come to Ottawa as the Archbishop is the presence of bishops who come to the march and who come to the masses that we have. We have a mass the night before, one of our smaller churches, and then on the day itself at 10 o'clock we have Mass in the cathedral in Gatineau in French, and then in our cathedral in Ottawa, and a couple of large churches, St. Patrick's Basilica, and a good number of bishops will come out to encourage the lay people. The March for Life is a lay initiative that has received the blessing of the hierarchy. Our priests are very strong, our bishops as well. They can't come every year, but I've been very pleased with the support that the Catholic bishops, particularly the cardinals of Quebec and Toronto, have given to our march, and also the bishops from around Ontario and Quebec, and sometimes from outside. So, thinking back on Stalin's old quip about having the Vatican included in the United Nations, how many divisions does the Pope have? You yourself do not have your own divisions of pro-lifers that you order around. I don't order anybody around. I invite them to come. We make known the march. It's published in our bulletins and in our communications vehicles. I tweet about it myself. I invite people to come, but I leave it up to them. I sometimes will speak about it. When we had the visit of the Black Madonna of Czestochowa, a replica came in March the 18th, just between St. Patrick's Day and St. Joseph's Day. It was a busy few days, especially when we had a bishop's ordination on St. Joseph's Day. But I spoke with people, and there were numerous people who see this visit of the Madonna as an encouragement to the pro-life cause, and they came out in great numbers. And they were everyone from
every nationality and every age group in our city, in our diocese. So it was a wonderful testimony. And Father West gave a wonderful homily and reflection on the meaning of Our Lady protecting life and encouraging us who are working in the cause of life.
Yeah, we did a program with them. They brought the icon here to the show,
Yeah.
and
It was very moving for me just to see that.
Yeah, but I think it's very important to know that proper living out of the Vatican Council, by which lay people exercise their apostolate to the world and in the world, and that they're taking leadership. Of course, we support, but this is, in some ways, their special realm.
It is.
They're the ones who are going to be giving life and therefore protecting it.
And they're taking the same approach to the proposal for euthanasia in Quebec. It's the lay people who have really taken the charge, and they take their responsibility very seriously. They've sat in on sessions, they've written papers, the Catholic doctors are doing wonderful work, along with other doctors. They don't want this to be described as only a Catholic issue. This is a human issue.
Exactly.
And so we have Jews, and we have Muslims, we have atheists, and we have humanists, and Protestants, every type of faith and lack of faith, arguing that the dignity of the human person needs protected against euthanasia and assisted suicide. So the battle fronts are many, and we need to be engaged. But they are. I'm pleased with the way that they're taking the leadership and challenging us bishops also to be part of that.
Yeah, I had done a CD, or excuse me, a DVD in Poland some years ago, in which I was struck by the similarities in Polish parishes between the love of the Sacred Heart and the Divine Mercy. They usually would put the Sacred Heart, the Divine Mercy picture and lean it up against the Sacred Heart statue in the same church, because they saw that connection.
Yes, yes.
But the nuance of the Divine Mercy is that the message came to a very merciless time, and it's not only the mercilessness of atheistic governments under the Nazis and the communists, under nationalistic governments in World War I and so on, but also the mercilessness of a culture that induces women to kill their own children. This is where we need that sense of mercy and promoting that.
Yes. It's a wonderful, wonderful grace. And, the Sacrament of Reconciliation is a great gift for people who have struggled with it, struggled with the cause of life, have got themselves involved in abortion, and then repent of it. I think we need to heal, let them heal, and hopefully take a better stance in the future.
Now, one group that has developed in the United States is the Rachel's Vineyard and Silent No More. These are groups of women, and now increasingly the men who are the fathers of the baby, babies who are aborted, who have experienced abortion. They talk about it, and they let other women know these are the effects of an abortion on me now and how I regret my abortion. Do you have something like that in Canada too?
Yes, Silent No More is very present at the March for Life. The women and men give testimonies on the Hill. We usually stand before the Peace Tower on top of the Parliament Hill, and they witness to this. And I would say 3 or 4 or 5 people will speak on the Silent No More. In fact, after the march is over, it continues. The Ukrainians or Eastern Rite groups, usually led by the Ukrainians, will also have a prayer service at the end. So we have the wide variety of our church.
Yes.
Project Rachel is present in some of our dioceses in Canada, and I'm learning more and more about how complex these issues are, and how we need to be very sensitive in speaking about abortion and allowing women and men who've been caught up in it to be healed and to heal.
Yeah, it's again, once in a while I'll see the media try to portray religious people as mean and judgmental towards people who had abortions. But
I don't
that's
see
not
that
my
at all.
experience.
No.
Is that yours?
No. I think people are often surprised at how kind the church is, and church members are to people who struggle with abortion. One other interesting little ministry that just started was in Mississauga when I was there as a regional bishop in Toronto, and is now reaching out beyond the Toronto area, is called Morning Light Ministry. And it's a ministry of healing for women and men who've lost a child to sudden infant death syndrome, to a miscarriage. Often these have very painful repercussions, and we're not attuned to that. We haven't been able to handle it. And I've been very moved by this woman in Mississauga, Bernadette Zambry, who has done a wonderful job of caring for that and introducing it to priests, helping them to be sensitive to the loss of a child of any way. Abortion is one, but there are many other ways in which people lose a human being, a wonderful son or daughter, or brother or sister for the children, and we need to let the mercy of God be present in the healing ministry.
I'll certainly hear women, and sometimes less so their husbands, mostly women will say, you know, I had 8 children, 2 died of miscarriage, and 6 are still with me. And but it's as much.
It's a child that they carried, yes.
And that's something that's very dear to them. It still causes them pain.
But I remember speaking at a retreat for women when I was down in Nova Scotia as a professor. I gave a retreat, and we talked about the losses that people have. And so many people, mainly women that day, spoke about, well, how do you help us to handle the loss of a child by miscarriage or some other way like that? And I was not aware of the extent of the issue, and of the need there was for people to speak about it and to let the Lord come and somehow be present to them.
Yeah, I remember one family had let a Maronite pastor go back home. His parents were sick, so I took his parish for him. And one of the parishioners miscarried twins. And none of the cemeteries would even let her bury them.
That's right, yeah.
She couldn't find a place. And so we found this old German parish. A lot of Germans settled in Texas. And we went up there, and they had an old churchyard cemetery still. And the pastor said, he was outraged. And he said, you tell her to come on up here, we'll get that all ready for you.
That's not great.
You know, because that just wasn't, done. You know, but the Catholics did it. Now, I want to remember that tomorrow, May 8th, is the Canadian National March for Life in Ottawa, Canada. If you want more information about the march, go to www.campaignlifecoalition.com. So make that one word, campaignlifecoalition.com, and hopefully you'll find out more about tomorrow's march and how you can get in on it, even if it is a little late in the day. Get over there and join them in support, or support them where you live. We're going to take a little break, come back in just a couple of minutes, and we'll start getting some questions and some more comments from Archbishop Prendergast. So please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome back. First, I want to mention also, we'll get a chance to talk about this, Archbishop Prendergast is an author as well. His book is called Living God's Word, Reflections on the Sunday Readings for Year A. Now, this book is available through EWTN's religious catalog. And you just have to go to EWTNreligiouscatalog.com in order to find it, or you can call them at 1-800-854-6316. Also want to remind you that we love having you come down here to visit like these nice folks have done. And we have someone as far away as Alaska. It's even farther away than Ottawa.
Exactly.
And
colder.
Colder too in some parts, not everywhere. But we'd love to have you come and join us. So if you can, please contact our pilgrimage department. And their phone number is 205-271-2966. Or go to EWTN.com, and they'll let you know scheduling of masses, programs, and tours, instructions on how to get up to Hansville to go visit the sisters. They'll let you know places to stay and places to eat. And Archbishop, how'd you like your dinner tonight?
I loved going to the Golden Rule barbecue. It was wonderful. I had never had Alabama pork the way I did tonight.
There you go. So I got him over to the Golden Rule, and he right away saw, he's a biblical scholar. He saw that biblical connection of Golden Rule and the restaurant. Before we go to questions, what do you do in your book? What's the approach that you take in your it's commentary on the Sunday readings?
That's part of it. Most of it is devoted to 700 words each week for the Sunday readings. Okay. All the readings are covered. In Year A, which is devoted to Matthew,
yes,
there's a special introduction to also all the feast days that can take the place of a Sunday.
Okay.
For example, All Saints and All Souls, the Transfiguration, Feast of St. Peter and Paul, and so on. So that's in Volume A. Volume B, year of Mark, that'll be next year. I have a long introduction to the Gospel of Mark, which was what I wrote my thesis on. So
see, this is the thing.
I snuck it in. I said this is going to make up for the book I didn't write on Mark. And in the year C, devoted to Luke's Gospel, I thought since Luke specializes in the prayer of Jesus and the prayer of disciples and the gift of the Holy Spirit, that I would do something on Lectio Divina, how to practice it. So I have a little section on that. Now, so each of them has a little something special along with the weekly reflections. Would
this be a good book for someone to use as a preparation for going to Sunday Mass?
Well, I initially had it in mind for people just to read and to think about, but they tell me that many parishes, when the pastor or the deacon gets together with people in the parish to reflect upon the Sunday readings ahead of time to prepare the homily, they find this is a good book to get things started.
Okay.
I usually focus on the Gospel, but sometimes I focus on the second reading from one of the Apostles, or sometimes even on the Psalm or the Old Testament reading. But I always say something about the Gospel.
Okay. All right.
And I've got some cardinals who gave a little plug for each of them. I've got Cardinal George on Year A, and Cardinal Wuerl in Year B, and Cardinal Collins of Toronto in Year C. So I sort of pulled my hierarchical best stop. I pulled all the stops out.
Good for you.
And they wrote a little introduction each time.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, hopefully folks will get that and use that to prepare themselves for Sunday Mass.
Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Sure. Now, we want to get some questions. First of all, gentlemen, where are you from, sir?
From St. Petersburg, Florida, but I actually grew up in Texas.
Good for you. Good for you. And your question?
My question is concerning the Dr. Gosnell case that we had in the United States, and he was convicted, and there were specials on TV. I wondered if you had them in Canada, but now they're talking about making a movie about this case, and he was probably one of the greatest serial killers in our history. And so I have mixed emotions, and I'd like to get your viewpoint about the movie coming out. And would that help us or not? Because if people really knew what takes place in a partial birth abortion, they would be outraged.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have very many cases like that in Canada, partly because the public hospitals, health system, covers almost every abortion that people want to have. They can have it done in most of our main hospitals. Sometimes it's also in abortion clinics, but if we don't have it in abortion clinics, then it's usually pretty safe. So those kinds of extraordinary things are not as typical in Canada.
Well, what I heard reported is that Dr. Gosnell had a double clinic. He himself is African American, but in part of the part of his clinic for white women, it was much more clean and much better. But in the part of his clinic for African American women, it was filthy and horrible. And he did kill a number of babies after they were born. Okay. You know, he would take and snap their spinal cords. When they're fully out of the womb, he would snap cut their spinal cords and kill them. And it was awful condition. And a number of women, you know, had themselves a lot of problems because of the treatment. That was some of the allegations. But the reportage was of there's a big gap, and one of the quotes reported is that he said white women would never tolerate what I have here, but the black women just didn't mind, so I didn't keep it as clean for them as I did for the white women, which is horribly racist.
Yes.
But by a man who's African American himself. You know, I don't know in Canada what it's like, but in the United States, Margaret Sanger was herself a speaker at Ku Klux Klan women's meetings. She said that black people were weeds and we have to pull them, uproot them. Is there a racist component in the pro-abortion movement in Canada the way it is here? Again, Planned Parenthood, I think it's, about 70% of their clinics are in African-American neighborhoods, even though African-Americans are 12% of the population. Is there a racist component that you know of?
I don't have a sense of that, but I may just be uninformed. My sense is that everyone has access if they're in cities. Some of the people who object to government policy, for example, in Prince Edward Island, there are no abortions on Prince Edward Island, that province. They go to Halifax instead. So they consider that people who are pro-abortion consider that a hardship. And they've had a clinic in New Brunswick, which is apparently going to close because they're not making enough money. That clinic in the province of New Brunswick is not covered by the health insurance plan. So people have to put their own money into it. Whereas in all the other provinces, I would think that an abortion in a clinic or in the hospital would be covered by the public purse.
I see.
So I think the conditions are not as likely there to have those kinds of horrors. But I think you mentioned earlier on the fact that there are late-term abortions that are that are caused in Canada, and some of them brutally. So, but it's not as widespread as this particular story. This particular story by Dr. Gosnell was well reported in the social media, not in the mainstream media.
Yeah, again, the mainstream media avoided this the way they avoid covering
the march,
the pro-life march.
Pro-life, yeah.
Okay. Let's get another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
New Iberia, Louisiana.
Oh, I love New Iberia.
It's Tabasco sauce.
Yeah, exactly. You all make the Tabasco sauce, don't you?
We sure do.
Yes, I've been through the fields. And your question?
I belong to a pro-life organization, and we support a pregnancy center. I was wondering if y'all had pregnancy centers there that help support these people so that they don't have to have abortions.
We do have some, not very many, but most of our dioceses would have residences where women could go and bring their child to term and have the support of clothing and housing, and also some type of stipendiary help for them to cover their costs. Also, social assistance would help them during their pregnancy. I guess because abortion is so easily available, there aren't that many women who are asking for this, but whether you ask for it, the church comes through, or other places, groups like Birthright, who are not necessarily, they have many Catholics associated with Birthright, which is a support system for women started in Toronto by a woman called Louise Summerhill, and which has expanded across the United States and Canada.
Yes,
That's still, that's still very much there. They have 24-hour helplines, 800 lines to answer women who are in difficulty, and they help them. So, but we have a couple of residences in the Francophone and English-speaking settings in Ottawa Archdiocese where women can go and be supported in their pregnancy if they want to keep it, bring it to term.
Now, if a woman does want to keep her baby,
yes,
but she's not married and she's poor, she still can get a lot of assistance from the government because your healthcare system covers everybody, correct?
That's right, that's right. And also there would be social assistance that would be available for people below the poverty line. They could apply for it.
So, in some ways,
it's not the same as in the United States. It's not as extreme, but there's still poverty. There's still struggle. And I think women who might be going to university would say, well, how can I manage my studies and paying for this and working and looking after the child? They sometimes feel overwhelmed, which sometimes drives them to take the easy solution of the abortion.
Right.
But some of them will actually, because they are convinced of the life of the child and the importance of that, they will bring the child to term. And some will give them up for adoption. Not very many anymore.
Yeah, that's
really changed.
Yes, exactly. That's changed. The vast majority of children born out of wedlock, before the 1960s, were put up for adoption. Today,
and sometimes a lot of pressure was put on them to do that.
Sure, exactly.
I think that pressure's gone now, and I think, in a way, many couples who would love to have a child and can't have one and would love to adopt are not able to do it in Canada. They need to go to China or Ukraine or Russia, or Africa, and that creates its own problems.
Now, one other question too, that's related. In this country, the biggest factor in the poverty of women and children is a single parent household that usually, not always, but usually an unwed mother, that also applies to many divorced mothers, tend to be the majority of our poor.
Yes.
Is that the case in Canada?
That would be true too, yes. And also Native women who are of Indian, what we call Native Americans, or we call Native peoples in Canada, or Inuit, or First Nations people. That's really where a lot of the single motherhoods households are, and sometimes the women would have more than one child, either by the same man or by several.
So that becomes, something of a difficulty too. That the church needs to be available to help out in those circumstances as well.
Yes.
Yeah. We have another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Mobile, Alabama.
Mobile, Alabama. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
That's the home of the oldest Mardi Gras in this country.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Even more than New Orleans?
Oh, New Orleans, they're Johnny-come-lately. They're good, but they're Johnny-come-lately. They're bigger, but they're Johnny-come-lately.
It's more family-oriented.
Yes,
so it's much nicer.
Fewer tourists.
But you have a good time, though.
Yes.
And your question?
You said earlier that a couple had a problem burying their child that they had miscarried.
Yes.
I thought there was a certain age where you had to do that. You had to bury the child.
They, in the north part of Texas where they lived, they called around, and the mother herself had also been a big risk. She had major hemorrhaging, and her blood pressure was down to 36, I think it was 36. And so she was high risk, but while she was recovering, the father was calling around, and no cemetery would take him. None.
But it made me think about, what if we required anyone doing an abortion to have to bury that child, have to sign a death certificate, have to bury that and give the child the dignity of that it was a living being, it was a person, not just something to be discarded in in a trash can.
I don't know anything about this. And I don't even know what our policies in our cemeteries, to tell you the truth. I'd like to be answered with information, but I'm not prepared here.
But she's proposing that that would be
yes, I agree.
something that would, call people.
I don't think you're ever going to be able to, make abortion illegal again.
Right.
Our men have hardened their hearts too much.
Yeah,
so
you're right. But it would be something that really brings out, that this is the impact. But the reality is, in Great Britain, they took the aborted babies and they used them as fuel to heat the hospital by putting them in a furnace. I mean,
and the outrage when that became known led the government to change the policy to forbid it.
Right.
So it's interesting when people know what's going on and they see the inhumanity of it or the brutality of it, they do respond.
And the thing that they were doing, that wasn't some thing that they uncovered a scandal. I believe the hospital
just published
was bragging that they were being environmentally good. They're being, environmentally sensitive by recycling these babies as fuel. And, and given the tragic history of Europe, where the dead were incinerated by the Third Reich, you say, how can you do this? But they I believe they've stopped at the outrage. But, this is, again, for the apparatchik who was doing this, it was obviously something, this sounds like a great idea. And, that
be responsible.
Exactly. Bringing that up, such an attitude would then really be common among people who think of human beings as just one more animal, and that we're really not that different from the animals. Do you sense
sometimes even more attitude, more respect for animals? To look at what happened with the Copenhagen Zoo, where the giraffe was cut up and the children were outraged and the families were outraged.
Yes.
They took more sensitive care of this giraffe than they would have for a human being. It's a strange mixture of sentiments.
Or in Canada, certainly you have very strong protests against the seal hunt.
That's right.
That
not too many by Canadians, but some Canadians there. But
is that right? So Canadians are not the major.
Well, most people tend to be sensitive to the Newfoundlanders and to the people who are poor and who may earn a livelihood by the seal hunt for food and for the pelts.
Yes.
But there are still some in Canada who would object to it as well.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But sometimes there's certain folks who have a drive to do that they don't show for children.
Well, they wouldn't consider the fetus. They call it the fetus rather than child. They use the language that distances themselves from the human being, and that allows them to do that, to argue the woman has a right over her body and so on.
And that this is something subhuman inside of her.
Well, I don't think they addressed that one. I just they don't call it human. I don't think they would say subhuman. Maybe they would, but I think they just say it's the woman's right to control her body, and that's that.
Yes. Now, in terms of something that we have going on in this country, 40 Days for Life.
Yes.
Is that also in Canada?
Yes, we've had it several times in the Archdiocese of Ottawa. We have to be careful that we don't run one event into another and people get tired from doing too many things.
Sure.
But we've had, I would say, every year we've had either the fall or the spring. Usually the best thing would be have it fall one year or spring one year, skip the fall, and then have it the spring again or the fall. I think having it two seasons in a row is just too much for people because we have the March for Life and we also have the Life Chain in October and so on. So
what is the 40 Days for Life about?
40 Days for Life is really prayer in front of an abortion clinic and also by other people who would join in with them and pray in solidarity with them, to persuade women and the men accompanying them going into a clinic to not go through with it, but to understand, respect the life of the child and try to save children in two ways. One, by persuading them not to have an abortion, and also praying for an end to abortion. Okay. So the two are together. They would also sometimes have join it with fasting. And normally in Ottawa, when we have it, we have a kickoff service in one of the churches, either Vespers, or then we go down to the clinic. The people would be praying there every day for the 40 days. And mid-break, midterm of the 40 days, they would have a kind of rally to reflect upon what's happened so far and encourage people to continue. And then we would usually have a closing mass or a closing ceremony of some kind, a prayer service marking the end of the 40 days. So that's normally how it goes. We've used that as a way of recruiting people to the pro-life cause in this sense that we've asked parishes to take a day or half a day. So normally they don't cover the whole 24 hours, but they cover 12 hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., depending what the day is or what the season is. And try to have at least 2 people there all that during that time, with people from the parishes joining them occasionally for, so we had in the last 40 Days for Life in Ottawa, we had 25 parishes that signed up for a day or half a day, which was a very good increase. It brought in people who had not been in the pro-life cause before. And one of the things I encourage people to do through the Catholic Women's League and the Knights of Columbus, other groups in parishes, is take a step out, step up, try it, go for an hour, and you'll see that it's not going to, people might criticize you, but you can put up with it because you've got people there with you. And you can pray together, and it has a sense of, I'm committed to this. So a little gesture of standing up for the pro-life cause is a very important thing in sensitizing people to the issue and getting new members to join the cause.
Yeah, and it's not as if we're asking them to run for parliament or anything. It's just step out there and let other folks see that there are people,
good people like them,
right,
who believe in the cause. Yeah.
And I assume that the other churches join the 40 Days for Life too.
They do.
The various Protestant communities and Jewish communities as well.
I haven't seen presence of the Jewish community, but I mean, I know there are people who are sensitive to the issue, and maybe individuals would come. But so far as I know, we haven't been
nothing
able to
official from the synagogues.
No.
Okay.
I don't know.
The mosques?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So.
Basically, I keep in touch with our own people, and they give me a report on my people. But we've had some wonderful testimonies. I attended the closing events of the 40 Days for Life in Ottawa, and my own words of encouragement and thanks to the people for being there was obviously my part, not a very long one, but a number of other people talked about their experiences that they had during the 40 days, and that witness touched other people's hearts and lives.
Yeah, that's a very important part of this.
Speaking up and what does this mean for me is very important, and how I was changed or what this did for me. Yeah.
That's even at some of the pro-life banquets I've been to, the best part, I mean, I've had great speakers and all that, but the best part is when women and sometimes the men bring the babies
that were saved,
that they're saved because some pro-life person stepped in, got them to change their mind, and the baby's alive, and to see the joy on the faces of the parents. Yeah, I did keep my baby, and they're so happy. Yeah. If
we could persuade people, that would have go a long way to helping overcome the tendency to abortion and help the pro-life cause.
It's really outstanding. I just want to again alert you for tomorrow's march. You can still go to their website, www.campaignlifecoalition.com, campaignlifecoalition.com. Hopefully, many of you Canadians, even more, will come out. And Archbishop, would you join me in giving a blessing to our audience? May Almighty God bless you and keep you. The Father,
and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Well, it's been very much a privilege to have you
Joy.
here
Good
with us.
to see you again.
It's good to see you too. We had met over in Krakow, Poland, when we were both doing some work over there in 2002. But you know, we can bring you the Archbishop Prendergast and all the other guests and do all the other programs and coverage of news that we do because you bring this network to you. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll be able to pay our bills too. Thank you.